Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Asians Represent podcast, the Annie Award-winning series that explores Asian representation in games media and beyond. My name is Daniel, and I'm one of the co-hosts of the show. So for this episode of the podcast, I'm joined by the directors of Unbreakable Publishers, Jacky and Knilly. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
I'm super hyped to have you both here because it's been literal years since Unbreakable has been the subject of an Asians Represent episode. I had to go all the way back in the archives to actually find out which one, and it was actually episode 17 when Jacky, you, and Colette Quach were on the podcast to talk about the first Unbreakable book, and that was 4 years ago. That was 4 years ago.
So much growth has happened.
so much growth, and I'm happy Jacky reached out to talk about Unbreakable again, because you folks have like another book coming out. And since the first Unbreakable book, there was one other Unbreakable book, and that was Unbreakable Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't do an episode on that.
No.
We had mentioned it, we talked about it a lot, we pushed it, but we didn't do an interview. So I'm super excited for us to make up for that 4 years of time and kind of introduce our now much larger audience to Unbreakable. But before we dive into that, we first need to talk about who you folks are. Let's start with you, Knilly. Knilly, who are you, and what do you do in this space?
Yeah, I'm Knilly. This is my I know like Unbreakable's been here. I think this is my first time actually on the podcast. But
it is.
Yeah. So my name is Knilly, or Caroline. If you see me on the internet as that too, Caroline. She, they pronouns. I actually am like a full-time software engineer, but I had to do this with all of my creative friends, and it's so good to have been doing this and partner up with Jacky on this. And for these past few years, it's been a good time. I'm the art director and layout designer for all of the Unbreakables of the past, and also for Pathways, I did the cover art.
I didn't know you did the cover. It's really good.
Thank you so much. I'll show it off when we get into it. But
yeah. And then Jacky, what about you? You're no stranger to the Asians Represent audience.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. If you haven't met me, I'm Jacky Leung. I am a Annie Award-winning writer and editor for TTRPGs, and I've been the creative lead for Unbreakable pretty much since its inception. And all I do all day is just write TTRPGs, and that's about all I do.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a lot of credits to your name. Like, you've worked on a ton of Pathfinder products, Fallout. You and I infamously predicted that key would be changed to focus in the new edition of D&D over a year before it actually happened.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
But you two are responsible for one of the coolest sort of anthologies out there in indie TTRPGs. I think that Unbreakable, for those who don't know or haven't heard of Unbreakable, is really special to not just like me, but to, I think, a lot of Asian folks in the TTRPG space. I feel like Unbreakable Publishers has a very similar goal to that of Asians Represent, and that's to sort of platform Asian voices. And that's what you folks are doing, but through publishing, not through like podcasting like us. And so for the audience who have never heard of Unbreakable, what is it? I mentioned platforming Asian voices through publishing, but what do you folks actually do?
So Unbreakable follows the philosophy of like our own voices for creatives. So that means that people of their cultures basically are able to tell their stories of their experience and use their experiences as well. And that is such an important pivotal thing for our creators, because we want to be able to allow our Asian creators, to be very unapologetic about themselves, to be as honest with themselves, with the material and the medium, because sometimes we don't get that luxury. Even when we're being creative, sometimes we don't get that. We have to kind of hold some of it back. And the idea is that for Unbreakable is that, no, you're breaking out of those molds. You're out of those stereotypes of being a reserved Asian person. You're like, you're going to be honest about it. You're going to be very loud about it. And so that's what we want our creators to do. And then the other important element was that we wanted to provide an opportunity for other Asian creators to have the ability to learn at least the basics of like getting published in the TTRPG space. And it's usually through like a shared revenue project together, so everyone gets a little stake in it, so everyone gets a little understanding of like, okay, what does it feel like for me as a writer to experience the pipeline process of getting of pitching an idea, drafting it, and then going through revisions, and then going through final revisions, and submitting your completed draft. And for our artists, it's also it's the same way, getting assignments and getting critique and feedback from from at least an art director, and and that's what we get. And then we get also, we've been able to bring on board like a bunch of wonderful people who are very kind and understanding editors to help also provide additional feedback and guidance and development, which is something that if you're coming into the industry, you don't get that luxury a lot of the time. You just kind of have to just give what you got and hope they like it. And sometimes it's a very raw deal. So, we wanted to provide those earlier steps and give a better experience to get in.
Yeah. Knilly, did you want to add anything to that?
No, Jacky really Jacky hit it right on the head. And I think it's really been a testament seeing like when some of the people that have like they just started in the space, because like a couple years ago when we started Unbreakable, like the indie scene was rapidly growing, right?
Yeah.
And so people were just trying to get into it. Everyone was like new to it, and so many people we've seen grow. Like me specifically, looking at artists that have gone on to do works with some of the big names, right? Like it's so cool to see that growth, and like it always like it warms my heart when some people are like Unbreakable was really like where I got the confidence to like make my portfolio and do all those things and break out into the industry as an artist, as an editor, et cetera, et cetera. So I think like aside from like teaching people like those skills in publishing and what it's like, but it also gives people like the comments being like, okay, I did this and it's great and it's awesome and it's amazing. And I've worked with so many cool folks and that are also like, it's networking too, right? So I think it's like provided a lot of that space, both as like a technical skill and a soft skill, as people call it nowadays. But it's not soft;
Yeah.
it's necessary.
Not soft at all. It's very hard.
Yeah.
It's Unbreakable is where a lot of people got their sort of like first shot. I know that there are a ton of people whose first ever, I don't even want to call it a freelance gig, because Jacky, you're right. It has the elements of like, this is what it's like to work in the industry. But at the same time, it also feels like you are being an indie creator and you are a part of a collective, because you have complete freedom over what you're actually doing. And for a lot of people, this was, their first ever credit. I know that like, our friend Steve's first ever writing credit was in Unbreakable. Right.
Yep.
I see a lot of folks here who are on this one who I know that this is some of their first ever big credits. I know that like there is an adventure here by another friend of the podcast, Peter Cargill, and I haven't actually seen other freelance stuff from him, but I've seen this and I'm like, oh, damn, Peter's there. And it was edited by Max Pfeffer, who is another person who I know through the podcast, which is like super cool to see. But I really love what you folks are doing with Unbreakable, because for folks working in TTRPGs, having a revenue share model is not common.
No.
It is not common at all. When you're working in the industry, you typically will get paid a little bit for your writing. Product comes out, and you see no more money after that.
Yep.
I think I've worked on over 40 tabletop RPGs, and I think Unbreakable and a couple of others are the only ones that have like a revenue share model. So what you folks are doing is like really, really unique. On top of the fact that you are actually giving a lot of Asian creators their first shot, which everybody really, really needs to respect.
I think because now that the books are out for that. So I remember James' case, Daniel for Paizo when we did the Tian Sha books. Several of James told me that a lot of the several of the people that they brought on their first credits were Unbreakable, and they told us about it, and they were like, "Yeah, people said like, yeah, I'm coming from Unbreakable. I did Unbreakable, and so it worked. In other words,
Yeah, 100%. Like I did Unbreakable, and I'll say this: I did Unbreakable before I worked for WotC.
This is true.
I did Unbreakable before I worked with WotC, and it was like a good experience. And
Mhm.
I've continued to help out Unbreakable, whether it be
Yeah,
as like an editor, or consultant, or anything like
Yeah.
that.
yeah,
I think you know it's really hard to break into this industry. There are a
it,
ton of people who will say, you can just go and self-publish. But self-publishing doesn't expose you to some of the things that you mentioned, such as like the project management side of it, such as the
mhm.
collaboration with editors and artists. Um, and so what you're doing, again, I keep saying this, is I think extremely important to marginalized communities. And I want to see more projects like Unbreakable. I want to see other publishers kind of pop up and kind of support their own communities.
Yeah.
So we're not here to talk about the early days of Unbreakable. We're here to talk about the newest release, Unbreakable Pathways. So, can you, Knilly, can you tell me a little bit about what Unbreakable Pathways is? Because I know you're holding a copy
I'm
of
holding the book.
it. You're holding the
Here's the
book.
cover. Yeah, Unbreakable Pathways. When we were coming up with the concepts for these, so I guess I have to talk a little bit about the past. Our first volume 1 was a 5e edition book. It was just an anthology of that for 5e. But we know that there's much more out there with 5e, and that people in our community had stuff to say through other ways of playing. And so we made Revolution, the book that came out before Pathways, and Pathways are both books that are anthologies with different systems, and it sounds a little confusing, but it's great because a lot of them are multi-purpose adventures too. Um, but I think the concept with Pathways and Revolution was we got so many really cool entries when we were like, we're gonna work on like an indie book that isn't like 5e, and we got so many cool ones and we couldn't really decide, but we saw a theme. We was like the big theme was fighting against like, and decolonization, and like going back to our roots and fighting the powers that be to, to liberate ourselves, right? And
Mhm.
that's Revolution. But then Pathways is like about the journeys we take as a community, sharing in a lot of food.
A lot of food.
Theme in this one, but also like embracing like the spirit of the journey, and whatever that journey may be it like one of the adventures in here is about supporting a fishing village that's going through a little bit of a monster problem, but also it's like internal turmoil, and how do you build community around that. And then some of it's just like theater, like it's a lot more cultural, I think, than like focusing on revolution and change. Like Pathways is all of the different roads you can take.
I love that. I love that. And so I was looking at the press kit that Jacky had sent me, and so this book features 7 adventures, and they all use different systems.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've seen a book that uses this spread of systems. So you have the Year Zero engine, you have
Mhm.
Errant, one of my personal favorites, Valor, Dungeon World, Old School Essentials, and Powered by Lesbians, all in one book. I think I got them all right.
I think
Yes, you
did
got
you
the
get
major
Pariah
ones,
as
yeah.
well?
Oh, and then
Oh,
Pariah, and then
yeah, Pariah's
Pariah,
on here, yeah.
and then I guess technically Godbound as well.
Yeah,
Since
Godbound, some PBTA stuff. Like there's a few that can be molded to the other systems, which is I think the same thing as Revolution, right? It's like very flexible in that way.
Yeah, I mean, like, I see Errant and then OSE, and
Yep.
then so any OSR system can really be used for both of
Mhm.
those adventures over there.
Yeah.
But I think that's really cool about this book, and because they're not unified by, again, a system.
Right.
Unbreakable Volume 1 happened to be, unified by the system of 5th edition D&D. But this one, we're all unified in that everyone was Asian.
Yeah.
And that there's this sort of, like you said, shared theme of like community and the journeys we take. I was actually really curious as to why it was called Unbreakable Pathways.
Mhm.
Um, so I got to ask, I've talked about like my love of like the Errant like system, but I want to know, like, we like everything in the book. Don't get it twisted. We like everything. But what are you most excited to play? What are you most excited to play?
Oh.
I gotta know.
What am I most excited to play? I mean, my little bias is that oh my gosh, what is this? The Price of Fish, the adventure I was just talking about.
The Errant one.
The Errant one, yes. Specifically because I also made the map for it, and so and some of the monsters in there are intriguing to me. Though it always jump scares me whenever I turn to one of the pages that has like that one art.
Don't spoil it. People have to buy the book to see it. Yeah, people have to buy the book.
I'm not going to spoil it, but every time I turn the page, I'm like, oh, you scared me. So, and I think it will do that. But I think also to play into your bias for Errant, I'm like, that system also intrigues me. Which is, I think, is also another like side effect of this kind of book, right? Like, oh, the adventures are intriguing. What's this system about? Right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And we have the great honor of like, two of the systems in here are also two of the adventures are here have systems written by the authors of those adventures.
Yeah, because the other one is Valor.
Yep.
That's Liana's game. So if you're interested in like high octane sort of like anime style stuff with lots of powers, like if you want to play Bleach or like
Yeah.
Naruto in a tabletop RPG, that's what Valor is for, and that's for the adventure, A Family Affair. And I was actually really curious about that because
Yeah.
when I look at the art, because I think it's like if you're Asian and you look at the art for A Family Affair, it is like it's so deeply relatable.
It's very relatable. It's you have family elders huddling on a table and
smoking and playing cards.
playing cards. There's food everywhere. Like, but I think the wonderful element about a Family Affair, because I remember when Liana pitched that a whole bit, and it was about like literally clan, like inter-family clan dynamics, and I was like,
that's too real.
Yes.
Yeah, like you pick a faction essentially that you can be part of.
Yeah.
In this adventure.
The factions within a family, like which
Yeah,
cousins are you gonna be allies with?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because like that was the whole idea, and I loved it because that was like I like because one of the elements of Pathways, like because we did a lot of them did deal with like family or kind of like cultural elements, but we didn't get to. But Liana's was like one of the few that had to deal with actual family politics, and we're like, oh yes, this has to be in here.
Yeah, you know what? That's one of the things that stood out for me because like I know what Liana really likes in their design. And when I saw the art for A Family Affair, I was like, that is not what I would have expected of a Valor game. But I think that's what's so cool about this is that like you have the creator of the system writing a one shot for their system in an anthology of completely different games. And so like I'm actually really curious to see like how that plays out given what I know about Valor having played it. Very, very cool. So Jacky, what is the adventure that you're very curious about or most interested in playing?
I will say probably the ones that there's two because I've been very personal with all of them because I had to do a lot of editing or review editing for a lot of them. So I think the ones that I definitely wanted to Family Affair is definitely a very personal one for me just because like I loved what Liana did with it because like I vaguely know about Valor. I've read Valor before, so like it was just nice. It was just interesting to see a different approach to it. And then I think the other one I really thought was kind of the one that interested me also was the one with Hans and Kevin's adventure for the Ghost Festival, which is a Year Zero engine game.
What's that one called? The Ghost Festival.
Yeah, the Ghost Festival, and that one. I thought that one was a very also like because this was also like a project that it required it started with one author and then we included another author in about halfway through or at least the early stages of the writing because we needed someone with Southeast Asian cultural backgrounds because we needed more context for things so Kevin came on board to help with that. And ended up so the both of them worked on this adventure together. It came out fantastic. I believe.
Yeah, and Kevin worked on Unbreakable Volume 1.
Yeah,
right.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
Kevin's
also Revolution.
He also,
Kevin's
I think, yeah, he also wrote. Kevin's been in all of
alumni
them.
for Unbreakable.
yeah, I think he's
Kevin's in all
contributed
three
to all of
books.
them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Kevin's in all 3 books.
yeah. Kevin is Kevin does a really good job of like incorporating their culture into their work, and they're really passionate about that. So I'm glad that you were able to bring on Kevin. And there are a lot of people who I know from like my early days in the RPG scene, like Rob Abrazato. I saw has like edited a whole bunch of those, and Rob was one of the first people I kind of met when I started like
Yeah.
working in this space years ago. So that's super cool to see like a lot of these. I was gonna say old faces, but I don't mean it literally old.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love seeing all these people from like my early days as a designer still
Mhm.
working with Unbreakable. And I think that is because of the sort of community that you two have cultivated. I think it's the shared passion for what Unbreakable actually means. I think it's the shared values that everyone really aligns with when they sign on to and commit to working on
Mhm.
Unbreakable. Um, so we've kind of highlighted a couple of adventures that we're super keen on. Ghost Festival, I will say, has like some very very striking art. And we were talking about how like if you get the digital version of Unbreakable Pathways, that thing blown up on your like monitor
It's
will
beautiful.
look incredible. Um,
Mhm.
so we
Again,
talked about the
not playing
Ghost Festival.
favorites, but that
Yeah,
art.
not playing favorites, not playing favorites, but
Favorites.
we talked about Ghost Festival, the price of fish, and we talked about a family affair. But there are some like incredible adventures that we're super excited about, particularly from like a thematic perspective. Because I know that the Fly Me to in brackets the Lady on the Moon is a clever
Mhm.
title that plays on that Chang'e and Hou sort of
Yep.
mythology. And then I just love seeing selfishly OSR titles get support with Asian adventures. Because if you look at, a lot of the OSR stuff that you find online, a lot of it is for like European coded content. And seeing that stuff that is explicitly Asian coded for the OSR is like really, really cool. Because I know that that community is always looking for new content, like new modules, new adventures, new rule sets, new procedures that they can use in their games. And I know that that's going to draw a lot of people to Unbreakable because of that connection there. So really, really excited about that. Now I had another question that I wanted to ask you folks about Unbreakable. Obviously, folks can buy it now. Folks get it on Drive Through RPG in both digital and physical formats. I will say that you folks have put a lot of effort into making these products as accessible as possible. So the font is very, very readable. Um, and you've made the pricing accessible to folks as well while still not compromising the livelihood of freelancers, which I really appreciate. But I want to ask, like, after Unbreakable Pathways, like, what's next? Because I know you got a ton of submissions for stuff. Like, what's next for
Yeah.
Unbreakable?
I think we kind of Jackie and I have talked about this and we've kind of like mentioned it in the Discord, but I think Jackie and I are personally taking a little bit of a break. So we are looking for people to like take up the helm. And the thing is like the community, while a very like quiet one in the Discord since publishing has like died down, every now and then the community will post job postings. It's actually like the most we could honestly just be a job posting board for within the Asian TTRPG
Yeah.
thing. That's like a most popular channel. But yeah, Jackie and I are gonna like take a little bit of a break because while yes, it is finally out, we're very happy. It did take some time to get here beyond the we had a very lofty goal of getting them out one year after the other, but between the pandemic and lives changing, it kind of like tossed off our schedules and maybe a little bit of burnout due to the world.
The
Um,
world. Yeah.
yeah, but that's not to say that like I don't think it's gonna like Unbreakable's not going anywhere. You're just like I think Jackie and I are still figuring out the next steps.
Yeah,
And I
totally.
Yeah, we definitely want someone to. Like the one thing I've always I know I've told it to Knilly many times. Like Unbreakable's a stepping stone for everyone, including ourselves, the people who are helming it. Because I never believed that we would be here permanently. I always believed that there will be others to take on the mantle and maybe do more with it, do better with it, do more, build on what we started. That's always been my firm belief about Unbreakable. So like, I think we're right. So like, while we're taking us a little time off, we're going to be trying to see if we can find stewards who are just as passionate and as we are, and willing to at least see if we can come up with like a good plan and strategy for the future for Unbreakable.
Yeah, I think that, I think you've made it very clear that you two are not Unbreakable. Unbreakable is more than just like the people who kind of run it or contribute to it. Unbreakable is really about like the Asian community.
Hmm.
And I could see so many things coming out of Unbreakable. And I really like how you pointed out that, you want to see people kind of take stewardship of it. You want to see people who are maybe looking for opportunities to manage projects
Hmm.
step in, because I think that there is a lot of opportunity to do things even just online. If you were to do like design jams
Yeah.
or anything like that, if you wanted to do, zines, if you wanted to work with other publishers under sort of like an Unbreakable like collaboration, I could see that happening as well.
Hmm.
I know that there are a lot of indie publishers that are looking to, work with marginalized communities, but also like uplift indie creators. For instance, Plus One EXP is a really good example of a publisher that wants to kind of work in of the variety of indie TTRPG spaces, because there isn't just one, right?
Right.
And I think Unbreakable is a really good brand that Asian designers recognize and Asian folks will always recommend because of the value it's had in kickstarting a lot of people's careers. Because you mentioned Tianxia, I think that like a lot of the folks who have credits in the Tianxia World Guide or Character Guide have also worked on Unbreakable. I
Yep.
would say there's a significant overlap in in the folks who have worked on both of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of those moments where when we started working on it, I think we were all like, "Hey, I recognize this name here."
Yeah, I one of my local game stores, and even seeing some, they have a huge, first of all, lots of printed indie books on shelves. Love
Yeah.
that. Their D&D shelf is just, it's there, but they have a whole section just indie, like zines and all that stuff from so many creators. And I'm like picking up like, oh, I know this one. And then a lot of it is like people from our community or and our, other connected communities that not just our Asian communities, but we have a lot of like marginalized folks that have published stuff, and I'm like, oh, I'm holding this in a store. It's so cool.
Yeah. I was literally just at an LGS yesterday, and they had like it's the biggest, one of the biggest LGSs in my city. So they have a ton of D&D and a ton of Pathfinder, but they had an entire section dedicated to small print. Like,
Mhm.
like small print runs, like the soft covers that are like that magazine format.
Yep.
And I was actually
Yeah.
really surprised that they had that. Um, I had a thought about Unbreakable because I recently learned about another publisher called Silvervine Publishing.
Mm.
And Silvervine Publishing, I'm gonna make sure I get this right. Yes, Silvervine Publishing is interesting because they do localizations of Asian RPGs. And the one that I had just read was one called Floria, The Verdant Way, and it's from Japan. It's an indie RPG about um, plant symbiotes. They're like wizards who have herbs inside of them that give them magical powers. And the
So
mechanics of it actually involve you coloring in shapes on like a grid that are formed by the spell. So like if you want to cast this spell, you have to be able to color in a triangle.
that's so
Um,
cool.
and so that's your
It's
spell
cool.
slots are really the array of shapes that you have on your character sheet. It's really dope.
Hmm.
But I think that Silvervine Publishing is a really great way for sort of consumers in the West to actually get games from Asia. And so I could even foresee like Unbreakable giving opportunities to designers in Asia to have their work translated into English too. I
Yep.
think
For
there are so
sure.
many opportunities for folks who want to make sure that Asian RPGs and Asian RPG design sensibilities and Asian cultures get kind of included in the wider consumer base for RPGs. And
Yeah.
again, Unbreakable's been a
For
really big
sure.
part of that.
I know
Yeah.
for Revolution we had a few writers and creators that were
overseas, like not North
overseas.
America, essentially.
Yeah, not North America.
Some of them were actually like from like India, like Southeast Asia. So it's like
Philippines. Yeah.
The Philippines. So like, and that was the thing that like it was very humbling for us to just know that we were very we were giving that kind of opportunity for folks, especially like you said, like giving the opportunity for people the ability to have their games translated or produced in a Western audience. And it's because that's even a harder threshold to break.
100%.
So yeah, and that's like something we've always tried to keep in mind about how important it is to give those opportunities, like what it means and what it can do for others.
Yeah, Unbreakable. I know you folks are going on a break, and I think it's a well-deserved break after 3 books. Because I know you said you wanted to do 1 a year, but 3 books in 4 years is actually quite the achievement. Like, let's not downplay that. That's 3 hardcover books, like full hardcover books, fully colored as well, in 4 years is quite the achievement. So it's a well-deserved break. But I know you folks like have a ton of expertise. So I personally would love to to see you kind of continue to share that expertise, whether it be through like continuing to publish or even having Unbreakable be, helping people with consultation and stuff like that. I think there's a lot of really cool opportunity again after this well deserved break. But that said, Unbreakable Pathways is out now. It's an anthology of 7 adventures for a variety of systems, from Powered by the Apocalypse to Year Zero, to OSR systems like Old School Essentials and Errant, and even if you want to emulate anime, but with family drama, you have that with Valor. Like, you're gonna get everything with Unbreakable Pathways. And I have to say, like, I'm so proud of like the entire Unbreakable team, because it's been so cool to see you folks like put out like release after release and uplift so many people. And it must fill you two with a lot of pride seeing where all of the creators who have contributed to Unbreakable have gone since Unbreakable.
There was, I think, like a couple months ago, Knilly and I actually had a call where we were just talking. Because we were doing some final last minute planning for like Unbreakable and release scheduling it. And when we were in having that call, I remember the both of us just taking a pause and like thinking back to how many of our creators who've worked on Unbreakable are now literally in like big leadership positions in different publishing houses. Some are very prolific now, and it just is a joy, because like the legacy should always be that where people go after you, not anything else. And that's what I wanted, was that's what, and it fulfilled that for many of our creators. So I'm very happy with that.
Yeah. And I want to like add, like, our community is also like, they have so much grace and patience. Like, again, we had planned for this book to come out a couple of years ago, like, but with good candor, we've been held accountable. We've also like had to push this. Like, it wasn't easy for us to like get back onto the bike, right? After like we took a break in the middle of quarantine where everyone else had to do other things to, get through that. And the fact that like it took also the community uplifting us to be like, hey, we're still here and we're very excited. We're just as excited as you. And it took that like a little extra push of energy for Jacky and I to be like, we have this book to go over the finish line. And we do technically had some stuff in production, but we're gonna, like, again, we're not doing it as like a big official release, but we're helping the creators of those like individually publish those and like getting the art together if there's any that was done, etc. Because I know a lot of people also were like, it was push and pull with the development on this like the last year or two. But again, I would like want to I don't want to like skirt over the fact that it was hard. Like, it's hard. But again, our community had like a lot of grace and patience with each other, with us especially. And I just want to, I'm going to take this time to thank them for that.
I always have to remind Knilly and myself that we literally had to do the jobs of like an entire publishing house. It's usually like 20 people minimum.
Yeah,
Between two of us.
it's impressive the fact that you both put in a lot of like creative and you know emotional and intellectual energy into making sure that just these 3 books have happened. So again, I'm really, really happy that the 3 of us were able to celebrate the fact that like Unbreakable Pathways is now out. Folks can go buy that on Drive Through RPG. You'll be able to get it in this beautiful hardcover,
Mhm.
or you could get it in digital if you want to save trees. Though I
You can
guess
get it in both.
you get it in both
You know,
if you like if you like digital and you want physical books. Because I like to personally have a copy of every single like game that I've worked on, and I think on top of you giving like the consumers like a really great product, you're also giving a lot of creators that first this is my creation moment. Seeing that, like having it on their shelf or being able to hold it, I think is like a special thing.
it
Um,
yeah, it's
For
very
sure.
empowering.
so that said, like go buy Unbreakable Pathways on Drive Through RPG in both digital and physical format. And if you're gonna get Unbreakable Pathways and you're gonna play all of those amazing games, there's 7 of them in there. If you're gonna play all 7, you're gonna need some dice to get you through all those games.
Yeah.
And Dice Envy has you covered. So head to diceenvy.com/AZNS represent and use code AZNS represent to get 10% off your order. And of course, for ad-free audio and all of the video of the Agents Represent podcast, including No Dice, No Problem, and the upcoming series, The John Who Podcast, a podcast about John Woo's filmography, head to patreon.com/AZNS represent. Special shout out goes to our most honorable patrons, Stefan, Michelle, Metalweave Games, Valorous Games, and the most honorable Epic Impulse. Alongside our other patrons, you folks really empower us to, keep striving to have as positive an impact on the industry as Unbreakable Publishers have. That said, Knilly and Jacky, I'll start with you, Knilly, because I said your name first. Where can folks find you on the internet?
Yeah, you can find me on the internet. I'm again also taking like a internet break, but you can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky as Hey Knilly. You can find me on Instagram as Celine Am, my real name, Caroline. But I streams every now and then, and hopefully you might see some both TTRPG and maybe video game stuff coming from me soon.
Like
But
video
who's to
game,
say?
like publishing stuff, you mean?
I might, yeah, I might be working on something on the side on my own. We'll see.
Oh, hell yeah.
Maybe.
Hell yeah. That's super cool. Because
Yeah.
when I think about you, I'm like, oh yeah, Knilly works in tech, does Unbreakable, and really likes Destiny 2.
Those are 3 good facts about me.
Those are 3 really good facts about you. Your branding is spot on.
Branding.
And then what about you, Jacky? Where can folks find you on the internet?
Hey everyone, you can always find me on the internet at Death by Mage on Blue Sky and Twitter and Instagram. I don't post as much on my Instagram lately just because I have been busy doing other things. But yeah, for me, I will probably most likely be working on other projects soon. I have a few coming up.
Yeah, you're constantly on the grind. So if you want to catch what Jacky's currently working on, follow Jacky on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, Blue Sky. Yeah, I'm really grateful that we've had this conversation, and I'm really, really happy that folks are now able to get Unbreakable Pathways. But that said, thank you two for joining me for this episode of the Asians Represent podcast. From episode 17 all the way now to episode 92, we've done 2 episodes on Unbreakable. And that's
Maybe we should
look
play
at
a
that
game
sting.
from.
Yeah, and we should play a game from this. Yeah, you know what? I want to get a physical copy, and then I want to do like a physical review of it because I really want to read through all these. So I'm very excited to buy my own copy. But that said, we'll see you folks next time, and thank you for listening to Asians Represent.